Hi, good morning, everybody. Guten Kvittel. Today is Daf. We started today's Daf. Today's Daf is Samach Aleph. Unfortunately, we will be falling behind. We'll be behind roughly a blot and a half. But we'll make it up next week, Mitzvah Hashem. So we'll do today. I know we have a shortened time due to Hashanah Rabbah, the lovely tefillos that were led to us by Mr. Alan Sorsher, and but we'll move from there. So we left off in the middle of Samach Aleph, Amar Aleph, right next to that little picture in Tosfos, Amar Rav Yosef. So Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rami Bar Abba, Amar Rav Huna. Ir she'yesheves al svas hanachal. You have a city basically right by the edge of a cliff. So, if there is a fence of 4 amos, right, and surrounding it, then you can go ahead and you basically count it as a town, and you count the 2,000 amos from the edge of the from the edge of the cliff. However, if not, but if there is no fence around, then each house is basically an individual house, and you count 2,000 amos from each individual house. So you say it has to be 4 amos. So what about other cases where we only need 4 tefachim? Why over here do you need 4 amos? Other cases, just a regular fence to show that this is the boundary. However, over here, it's more of a question of, since it's right by the edge of a cliff, therefore it's more of fear. People aren't going to use it. So therefore, but if you have a fence there, then people will use the entire area and will not be scared to use the area. Since they're using the entire area, that area is considered basically to be like a town. And therefore, since it's like a town, they get 2,000 amos, from the fences. But if there's no fence there of Dalet amos, then each house basically would only be 2,000 amos from the edge of their house. So I'm going to how to know that? The tiny learner Brisa, Hitiru Rebbe Sheyu Bnei Geder Yordin Lechamton, Vein Bnei Chamton Oilin Together. Now we're going to see this case or a couple of different interpretations. As you learn Brisa, so the Lashon says Hitir Rebbe, so Rebbe permitted the people of Geder. There's a town of Geder over here, right, to go down to Chamson, right, to one city. However, the Ebnei Chamson, other than together, the people of Chamson couldn't go together. So why can one go to one go to the other? It's my time. Simply, one of them had a fence there. So since they had a fence, it was all enclosed, and therefore they can count 2,000 from the edge of the fence, and therefore the other Chamsa Chamson was in its Tchum, but the other one, since it didn't have a fence, therefore the cliff in between them basically wasn't counted from the edge of the city or the edge of the town, rather each house, and therefore it didn't reach, and therefore they weren't able to go there. However, there are others interpret this case differently. So, however, Kiyasir Avdim Yomar. So he said, Tetruge Mantringa Luhu B'nei Geder Levin Masa. Right? He says no. The people of Geder were a bunch of thugs, right? And they used to go ahead and basically beat up the people of Chamsa, right? Umay hitir. And what does it mean, hitir? It doesn't mean hitir. It means hiskin, right? They were masakin. They made a takana. They made a decree that what? That they weren't able to go it. Right? In other words, they weren't able to go there. That they didn't want the people of Chamson to go to Geder, right? They decreed that, right? In other words, why? Why do the people of Chamson not allow, can't go together? Because they're going to get beat up, right? Umayshna Shabbos, and why do you, and what's the reason for Shabbos? The shchichus, right? Because here's our Masorah, right? You see that they were drinking on Shabbos. They were drinking on Shabbos, and therefore they would drink on Shabbos. And when the people of Chamson would come, the people of Geder would basically, pick on them and beat them up. So therefore, they said, people of Chamson do not go to Geder. So I understand, but if you say the people of Geder can go down to Chamson, right, wouldn't they bother them? So it says, no, right? A dog, right, which is outside its city, right, won't even bark for 7 years. In other words, when people are in their house, they're in their own community, they're in their neighborhood, then, they feel like, thugs, and they can do anything they want. But if they're visitors, if they're in an area that they don't feel comfortable with, then the people of Geder will not pick on the people of Chamson. If that's the case, when people of Geder go to Chamson, aren't the people of Chamson going to go ahead and beat them up? So it says no. It says yes, the people of Geder, they might not pick on the people of Chamsin, but they're not going to allow themselves to be picked on. So even though they were thugs, but they're only thugs in their hometown. But if they were visiting Chamsin, therefore they wouldn't. So therefore it says the people of Geder can go to Chamsin. There won't be fights then, because then it's like even. But people of Chamsin would go together, then they would get picked on, and therefore they decreed it had nothing to do with fences or walls or anything like that. So therefore they deflected the proof. And actually there's a couple other, there's another two opinions as to the pshat of this case. And then, however, so there's another, so Rav Safra Omar, Ir ha'asuya b'keshes havi. Really, the reason why one can go to one, the other one couldn't go to the other, is because, like the case we had before, where we discussed, the rainbow, or the bow, as they call it, but it was more, the shape like a rainbow. And so Geder was on the bottom, and Chamsin was on top. So the reason why Geder can go to Chamsin, why is that? Is because and therefore the two ends basically were more of the rainbow were more than 4,000 apart, and therefore it had to do with they measured 2,000 because it's not all considered to be filled in, and once not considered to be filled in, so we say that Geder reached Chamsin. In other words, the Chamsin went around. So therefore, since it went around, therefore Geder was there and able to enclose there. But not all the areas of Geder came to, not all the areas of Chamsin came to Geder. So therefore, the people of Chamsin couldn't go to Geder, but people of Geder were able to go to Chamsin. And Divi Barchin and Omar Anshe Ir Gadol of Anshe Ir Ketana Havi. Early, very similar teretz. One was a big, one was a bigger, similar to the case of big city and little city, right? Well, we have big city, little city. In other words, if when you measure, right, it goes to the entire city, then you have the entire city as your arbamos. But if it only reaches halfway, like into the big city, then you only get up until that point. You don't get the entire city, and that was what was going on here. In other words, Chamsin didn't go all the way through Geder, so therefore they only got halfway through Geder. But Geder, right, when you count from the edges, went completely through Chamsin, and therefore they're able to go ahead and travel throughout Chamsin. And Rav Kahana Masni Hachi, he taught this way we just had. And Rav Yomi Masni Hachi, and Rav Sava Rav Dimi Barchinina, and so they however had machlokes. Chadom Ira Sui Keshes Havi. One says the Chamsin was made like a Keshes. V'Chadom Anshe Ir Ktan of Anshe Ir Gadol Havi. That one says like the second shot, the difference between Rav Dimi Barchinina and Rav Safra. So therefore, that was the different interpretations of this case of the people of Geder and the people of Chamsin. Fine. Mishnah says, we actually discussed this case earlier. Anshe Ir Gedola Mahalchin es Kol Ir Ketana. The Anshe Ir Ketana Mahalchin es Anshe Ir Ketana Mahalchin es Kol Ir Gedola. Right? People of a large city can walk throughout in a small town, and people of a small town can walk throughout a large town. Right? Ketzad, what's the case here? Misha be'er gedola v'nason say be'er ketana. If someone lived in a big city and he put his eruv in a small town, or be'er ketana he lived in a small town, v'nason esiru be'er gedola, and then he placed his eruv in a large city, mahalech es kula v'chutzala paimam. Right? Then he's able to go ahead and walk. Right, the entire city and out of it, because he set his eruv there. So basically, his makom shvisa is in that town, whether it's large or small. That entire town is considered like his dalat amos, and then you measure 2,000 amos beyond that. However, there's another opinion. Rabbi Kiva Omer ein lo el mimakom eruva paimam. He says no, you don't get the entire town as your dalat amos. Rather, where your eruv is basically your dalat amos. And then you count 2,000 from there. So whatever from the makom of the eruv covers, that's where you get. So machlokes in Rabbi Kiva and Rabban. If you place your eruv, how much, where do you count from? Is it the entire town, or is it just from the makom eruv? And Amalhen Rabbi Kiva, Ila Tamayd li b'noisen eruva b'mara shein lo el b'makom eruva al paimam. I don't understand. Don't you guys, if someone puts their eruv in a cave, right? Don't you only get 2,000 amos from the point of the eruv? Same thing, right? Why is placing in a city any different than the Mara? Some are low. So the answer is Rabbi Kiva, no, Amosai bisman shein ba'diurim. That's only talking about a time where there's no people living in the cave. About yesh ba'diurim, mahalchas kula v'chutzala paimama. But let's say there are people living in the cave, and you put in the cave, then you get the entire cave plus 2,000 amos. So you see, they argue in the thing. In other words, only the reason the cave is you place it there because it's like placing it in a field, because no one lives in a cave. But if there are people living in this cave, then the entire cave is no different than a large city or a small city, that you get the entire inhabitable area plus 2,000 amos. Nimtza, turns out, turns out if you put it inside the cave, because people live there, you get the entire cave. But if you put it on top of the cave, right, where no one lives on top of the cave, then it's like putting an open field where you only get 2,000 in each direction. And a person who's counting, measuring, we've seen this. And a person who basically measures out, he places his erev in a certain place. Okay, you get 2,000 each direction, and he measures out. And if it comes out in the middle of the field, even if it ends in the middle of a cave, you don't get the entire cave. Wherever the 2,000 goes to, it doesn't include, right, an area that it goes to. Rather, it goes until the 2,000 point, and you don't get anything extra. Fine. So let's see the Gemara. That was the Mishnah. Let's turn the page. So, Zok the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Shabbos ve'ir chareva. So a person spent, if he went his Shabbos, right? Shabbos, he didn't use an erev. Rather, he himself was there. Shabbos be'ir chareva, in a town that was empty, right? In other words, it was once inhabitable, right? It was once inhabitable, and it could be inhabitable, but no one's there. So Shabbos be'ir chareva, l'Rabbanan mahalikas kula v'chutz l'alpayim amma. According to Rabbanan, you get the entire town. It's like your Dalet Amos, and you could also, and you measure out 2,000. But if one places his erev in this town, right? He only gets 2,000 from where his erev is. So it's different. It makes a difference. So if you remember, it's potentially inhabitable, right? People can live there, but no one's there right now. So if it's a regular city, people live there. So whether he or his erev is there, he gets the entire area. Let's say it's an empty town. It's an empty village, but he went there. If he's there, he gets the entire town, and then 2,000 beyond that. But if it's a potentially habitable town, but no one's there, and he places erev, but he places his food there, then you only get 2,000 from the food. You don't get the entire town. So there's a difference. And Rabbi Elazar Omer Echad Shabbos Echad Heiniach Mahalik as Kula v'chutz l'alpayim. Says no, whether he starts there himself or even places his food there, since it has potential to live there, therefore he gets the entire town as his Dalet Amos. Now, Omar Sameisve Asukasha. So Omar Len Rabbi Kiva. Let's look at our Mishnah when Rabbi Kiva says that Rabbanan Yatam Maidim Libanais Nesiru B'Mara Shein Lo Makom Eruv Alpayim Amo. Then a person goes ahead and places his eruv inside a cave. That don't you agree that you only measure from the food, right? That's only where, right, nobody's there. In other words, the empty cave is like an empty field. Therefore, you only get 2,000. So you agree if nobody's there, you only get 2,000 amos. So why, if nobody's in this empty town, you should only get 2,000 amos? You shouldn't get the entire town plus 2,000 amos. You should only get 2,000 amos. So the answer is no. It means there's no. What does it mean? There's no people living there. You can't live there anymore, right? It's not just. It's not potentially inhabitable. It's not. You can't live there. It's in ruins. Since it's in ruins, that's why you get only Dalet Amos in that case. And Tashma, similarly, let's see. So come listen. Shabbos v'ir, a person began a Shabbos in a city, afilu hi gedayla k'Antiochia, like even as the size of Antiochia, or b'marav, he was in a cave, afilu hi kamaras tzikio melech Yehuda, or a large cave such as that, the cave of tzikio melech Yehuda, mahalech as kula v'chutz l'alpayim amos. So he gets, since he started Shabbos there, he gets the entire cave plus 4,000 beyond. So Ktani ir dumi demara. So it says over there a city similar to a cave. So mama or a chareva, if you're a chareva, just like a cave is empty, so to the city is empty. So maybe we're talking about an empty city which has potential to live in. The Shabbasin, it sounds like only if he can go ahead and he starts Shabbos there. But if he just puts his food there, he wouldn't get it. So remember, Rabbi Elazar said it doesn't make a difference whether he started there or he put his food there, right? He always gets the entire area plus 2,000. And according to the Rabbanan, right, there's an afkamina as to whether he started Shabbos there or he places food there. If he started Shabbos there, he gets the entire area. So it sounds like a Shabbos in lo. So Mani, whose opinion is this? Rabbi Kiva, ma area chareva, fili yeshiva nami. Why does, if it's according to Rabbi Kiva, right? If it's according to Rabbi Kiva, our Mishnah, right? So why does it say over there, ma area chareva? Why does it say over there something that was empty? Afili Shiva Nami. Even according to Rabbi Kiva, even people live there, you don't get any amount more than that. Elav, it must be according to the Rabbanan. The time of the Shabbasin. It sounds like only if he started Shabbos there, but not if he placed there. So you see, it's a kasha. So like Tema, so Gemara says no. Don't say that was the understanding, how to understand it when we say it was a city and a cave. In other words, a city is similar to a cave that nobody lives there. It says, Ella, don't say that the city was similar to the cave. Ella, Ema, Ma'ara, rather say that the cave was similar to the city. Ma'ir, Yeshiva, Af, Ma'ara, Yeshiva, just like the city is inhabited, so too the cave was inhabited. Rabbi Kiva, and this is probably according to the Rabbi Kiva, Da'amar, Ein Lamakam, Eruva, Ella, Alpine Mama, Uva Shabbos, Maybe. Right? And this must be according to Rabbi Kiva, who's saying that if over here, it was inhabited, these places were inhabited, and therefore, only if he's there does he get the entire area. But if he places his Eruv there, then he only gets 2,000 from the Malkum Eruv. So the Gemara says, what do you mean it was inhabited? It says like it was like the cave of Tzikio, which was an empty cave. So it says, Kamar Tzikio, below Kamar Tzikio. It was like his cave, but it wasn't. It was like his cave in the fact that it was very large, but it was unlike his cave because his cave was empty and uninhabited. But over here was talking about one which was inhabited, and therefore we'll say that only if you start Shabbos there, and therefore it was like the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. However, speaking of Rabbi Akiva's Shita, who says that if you place it in a town, right, that you don't get the entire town, rather you just get from 2,000 from the makom of the food. So Mar Yehuda Ashchinu Lebrei Mi Barachta. So you saw the people of the town of Barachta. They call Maisi Veribu Bebei Knishta Debei Agovar. Right, they went ahead and they put their eruv inside the shul the be'agover, and Amarlu Gavi Beitfei, move it over more so they can. So in other words, move it to that end of the shul so they can measure the 2,000 amos from there as opposed to here. So in order more ears will be permitted. So Amarle Rava. So he says Palga. He says Palga. Right? He says you're somebody who argues with the rabbis. Right? Cholik al Rabbanim is Chachamim, as Rashi says. Right? Palga. Right? We don't hold like Rabbi Kiva. In other words, if you have an Eruv in a town, you don't measure from the bread or from the food where you put the Eruv, you measure the entire town. And as we don't hold like Rabbi Kiva, they measure for the food, rather the entire area. So it doesn't matter where you put the Eruv, as long as it's in the city, you get the entire city plus 2,000 amos. So Hajjalach, Ketzad Me'avrin. So now we finish the 5th parak of Eruvin, and now we move weiter on to the next parak.
Simmental, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simmental. You will know the Israel well. Simmental, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, you will know the Israel well. Simmental, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simmental. You will know the Israel well. Simmental, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov.
All right, now
many more.
So let's start the new parak. We'll do Amud Aleph. So Hadar Ima Akum. So we've been We've been discussing cases of one who shares a chatzir with others, and we mentioned that the number one rule is everyone has to participate. Everyone has to participate. Very easy. Everybody's Jewish. Everyone participates. It works out well. But let's say you have goyim there. Let's say you share a chatzir, right? The two houses open up into a yard. So now normally in order to be able to utilize that yard, you have to have some sort of eruv. So Hadar Ima Avikachavim b'chatzir, one who basically shares a chatzir with an Avikachavim, or someone who does not hold of eruvin, such as a kusi, as Rashi brings down. Harei ze oiser alav. He's not allowed to go ahead and carry them. In other words, he's just like having a Jew there, and since he doesn't have complete access or ownership of the entire chatzir, he can't carry out from his house into the yard or vice versa, because the other person this guy did not participate in the eruv. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Aimer li'elam ein oiser ad sheyish shnei Yisraelim oiserin zel zeh. The only way the guy can go ahead and aser is if that there's at least two other Jews. In other words, if there's one Jew, then the guy doesn't affect it. If there's two Jews, then you have to go ahead and have the guy participate in the eruv, and if he does not, then it asers it. And we'll soon see. We'll have to explain this opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov.
Rabbi, does that mean if they said one Jew says he doesn't want it?
So if you have a Jew who's part of the eruv and he says I'm not participating, that for sure asers the other people from carrying it. All right, that for sure. The question is, let's say there's a guy and we just ignore him, right? So if we don't involve him, does that affect
No, the last line that you just said.
Yeah.
They actually have to each say they're answering each other. Nothing to do with the guy.
No, it has to do here. Look at right. Look at Rashi for a second, right? So during the base bottom, these two Jews live in two houses. Right? Right? And I was they are aser upon one another, and then and I was normally they aser upon one another, and then they want to make an erev together, right? Ha'akum aser leim of al yachid ein aser. Now, as the akum could forbid them. In other words, if they want to go ahead and do it, they still couldn't do it unless they had the participation of the third person of the guy. We'll soon see why there's a case why a guy can aser on two Jews, but he doesn't aser on one Jew. If it was one Jew and the guy didn't, it's fine. But if it's two Jews, then it's a problem. All right, but good question. Let's see. One time there's a tzeduki, right, which is similar to a guy in this circumstance. But not completely. We shared a mavoi with him in Yerushalayim. Abba and our father told us, go ahead, make sure before Shabbos you guys bring out your utensils, your kalim into the mavoi, right, in order that he shouldn't answer to us, because basically if he shows his usage first and he's not participating in the Erev, then answers to us. But if we go ahead and we start using the mavoi before, then it shows that he never wanted to use the mavoi, and therefore he would have be like a guy that it wouldn't affect us. However, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, B'lashon Acher, he says that this case actually is slightly different. He says, "Maharav asur tzarchecha b'mavoi ad shelo yitziv yasar lechem." Says, go ahead and use the mavoi for your own until he uses it. Because it's even if the guy used it after Shabbos started, he would go ahead and it would aser even after Shabbos started. As opposed to the first opinion was that once they started Shabbos and the other person, the Tzeduki, didn't use the yard, then he wouldn't aser them from using the mavoi. So let's see the Gemara. The Gemara was quick. So Yosef, Abaye, Barav, and Rav Chinin, Barav, and they were sitting with Yosef, Abaye, Abaye, and Abaye was sitting with them. Yosef, Kamri, Bishlam, Lorem, Meir. I understand. Meir, Ksaver, Diras, Avik, Chavim, Shmei, Dira. I understand that one guy can go ahead and aser the one Jew. Why? Because a guy living there is like another person living in the Mavui, and therefore, since he didn't participate in the Eruv or he didn't rent out his space, therefore, he's considered to be living there and not participating. It makes sense. It doesn't make a difference how many people that share the mavui with this guy. I understand Rabbi Yezeb ben Yaakov. If it's only one on one, so why doesn't he aser the one Jew, right? According to Rabbi Yezeb ben Yaakov. If it's not considered a dira, if it's considered like he's not living there, so even if there's two Jews there, how could him not participating aser the chatzar on them? So what is his shita? Samarlo Abaye first of all, Savar of Meir diras avik chavim shmei dira. Is that considered living? Right? The chatzar of avik chavim is like basically a pen of an animal. It's something an enclosure for an animal that's not considering a living quarters. So to a guy is not considered living quarters. So if a guy is not considered living quarters, so why is there ever an issue if the guy shares the mavui or the chatzar with the Jew to use the chatzar? There should be zero issue. So Ella de kuliyama diras avik chavim lo shmei dira. Everyone holds it's not a dira. Over here, we don't want people to go ahead and live with, share chatzeros with goyim, because then they'll go ahead and learn from their ways. So in order to avoid that, we're going to make them an issue when it comes to Eruvin. And people say, I can't live with them because they're not going to join in the Eruv, and therefore it will basically deter people from sharing chatzeros with Avei Kachavim. And Rabbi Yezeb ben Yaakov Saver, he holds that since people are scared of shvichas damim, trey the shchichi the gazru. So two people, right? So now, since what's the problem with living in the goyim? The people are scared they're going to get murdered, right? They're going to kill him. If there's two Jews living there, he's not going to murder anybody. So therefore, it's common for two Jews to be living with one guy, and therefore there'll be a gzeir in that case. That, hey, they're going to share your Eruv, and since they share the Eruv, therefore they're not going to live with them. So it makes sense to make the Gzeira when there's at least two people living there. However, you're never really going to find a case where one person lives with the guy because it's not common because a person is going to be afraid to lose his life. And therefore, lo Gzeira Rabbanan, therefore the Rabbanan were not Geyser. And Meir, and the first opinion, which was Rabbi Meir, right, I guess the Tanakama, right, Meir, Sometimes they do live together. Since they do live together, therefore we'll make a gzeir in all cases that the guy always basically ruins the eruv if he does not participate. So the Rabbanan say, "Ein eruv moed b'makom avik chavim, ve'ein bittul rishus moed b'makom avik chavim." And they say not only that, and eruv right, is now it will not work, right? To allow in a place where there's a guy, and there is no bittul rishus, also will not help. In other words, ad sheyasker. In other words, you can't just make an eruv, right? You can't just they can't participate in the bread, or they can't just say, you know what, we won't use the yard until you actually go ahead and rent the area from the guy. So it works different. A Jew, they can go ahead and participate by putting the bread, but with a guy, that they're not just going to put the bread out. There's not real schirus. You have to go ahead and actually have a real rental agreement. The and the guy do not go ahead and rent out, right? They're not going to rent it out, and they're not going to rent out. So therefore, that's the reason why they're going to answer the area for you, because they're not really going to rent out. So the Gemara says, my time, what's the reason? If you say, oh, the reason why they're not going to go ahead and rent out because they're going to be scared that the Jews are saying, oh yeah, we'll just make an eruv so we have the rights to the yard. And then all of a sudden, then they're going to take over their yard, right? All of a sudden, well, you sold us the rights, so therefore they're not going to go ahead and rent out, and that's the reason why they're asking the other case. So this works well according to the opinion who holds that the type of rental agreement is a real valid rental agreement. But according to the opinion who holds that you could even use basically a quote unquote like a fake type of rental agreement or a weaker one, so why would they be scared to do it? If it's a weak rental agreement, they're not going to be scared to lose their property. And where is this machlokes? You have to go ahead and use a real schirus, right? You can use a weaker one. So my ruya, my beria. What's the difference between a weaker one or a stronger one? So if you're telling me that a weaker one is with something, a stronger one is with a pruta, right? And ru'ua pachas meshav pruta, and a weak one is basically you pay them even less than a pruta, because we know by goyim that there's a thing called less than a pruta. So meshav pruta. So mi'ikol aman demer, right? The mi'akol pachas meshav pruta lo. But even according to all opinions, who holds that even less than a pruta is not considered to be a real valid rental agreement with a guy? You know they can rent things from a guy even less than a sheva pruta. Why is that? Because he says because one of the shivas which they are killed for, right, is the shivas of one of which is do not steal. So by Jews, the do not stealing only applies to a pruta or more. But when it comes to Ben Noach, it's even less than a Sheva Pruta. So we see that even less than a Pruta is considered to be valid when it comes to an Akum. So if that's the case, with the Akum, why can't you? So you can't say the rental agreement being less than a Pruta is considered to be a weak rental agreement because it's a fully fledged rental agreement, right? It's also less than a Sheva Pruta is not something returnable. So Ella, rather, what's the case? Ella Bria b'moraki v'burgani. Right. Rather, a strong one is basically you can go ahead and you put out your chairs, right, and your tables and your benches. But a weak one is basically doesn't give the person, the other people, the rights to go ahead and bring out their chairs. So now going back to our question. So why Goy will not go ahead and get or Akum will not get into the rental agreement with the Jews if you had to use a strong lease. So, but if you can use a weak rental lease, then why would they be scared to enter in it? So, nevertheless, they think that the Jews are involved with some sort of black magic or some sort of sorcery, and therefore they will not go ahead and rent it. And therefore, so since they're not going to go ahead and basically lease with a Jew, therefore a Jew will not be able to carry in the yard. If a Jew will not be able to carry the yard on Shabbos, then he's going to go find somewhere else to live, and therefore the Gzeira would be effective. And Gufa, speaking of which, so Chatzer Shavik Chavim Harehi Kedir Shabahemu, we said that the Chatzer Shavik Chavim is just like that of an animal enclosure, a pen. Umut Lach is Haitzi, and then therefore you go ahead and carry it in and out. From the house to the field, in the yard, into the house. But however, if there is a Jew who did not participate, then it's Aser Divrei Meir Spin Meir and Rabbi Yezban Yaakov Aimer Liyelam Ein Aser Ad Shiyu Shnei Yisraelim Aser Zed. No, it only asks that only there's two Jews over there, and we'll each of them also join to the Chutzner. Then it becomes problematic, and we'll explain that on Monday, Mirza Hashem. So we'll stop here. Everyone should have a wonderful day. Enjoy this last day of Chol Hamoed. And everyone have a good Shabbos and a good Yontif.
Regular time Monday, like 7:20.
I'm sorry?
Regular time Monday, like 7:20.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, there's no talking. We could start 7:15.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll put out a text just in case if we're running late.
Enjoy Shabbos, everybody, with yourself.
All right.
Shabbos. Bye, Rebbe.
Good Shabbos,
Everyone-
Yontif, Shkoch.
Everyone's welcome to visit Rebbe in his sukkah.
I'll be there
Over
all day.
Yontif.